Are we good? Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome. I hope everybody is doing well out there in Electron land. I'm glad you tuned into the service, and I hope you find something useful this morning. First things first, of course, happy Mother's Day to all of you mothers out there and daughters and families with mothers. And it's a wonderful day to celebrate. We'll continue our series of presentations about mystery this morning. And really the fundamental question is, what is a mystery? And the short answer is, I don't know. It's a mystery. I don't know. So I think with that, we'll just go right into discussion. If you have any questions and want to discuss mystery, feel free. Okay, that's my idea of a joke this morning. So let me start with some opening words. It's kind of a story, actually. One day, a religious man approached a mystic and asked, "Does God exist?" "Allow me to go within for an answer," the mystic replied. After meditating for quite some time, expanding her heart consciousness to embrace the totality of existence, she answered, "I do not know what you mean by the word God, but I do know that this world is more mysterious and more wonderful than I could ever imagine. I know that you and I are part of something so much larger than our own lives. Perhaps this something larger is what you seek." Then the religious man approached a scientist. "Does God exist?" "Let me think," the scientist replied. And so she thought. She thought about the vastness of the universe, 156 billion light years, or something like 936 billion trillion miles in diameter, and the almost immeasurable smallness of a quark. She thought of how the energy of the Big Bang fuels the beating of her own heart, and then she answered, "I do not know what you mean by the word God, but I do know that this world is more mysterious and more wonderful than I could ever imagine. I know that you and I are part of something so much larger than our own lives. Perhaps this something larger is what you seek." The religious man then thought to himself. He thought of what he knows, what he does not know. He thought about how he knows what he knows, and he knows he doesn't know what he doesn't know. Sounds like Donald Rumsfeld. He thought about his experience of the world and how it is but one tiny, infinitesimal fraction of all experience. He thought about his dependence on forces larger than himself, and he thought about the interdependence of all existence. He experienced wonder and pondered mystery. And then he knew. He knew in his soul the truth of what the mystic and scientist had said, that he is part of something so much larger than his own life. And then, and only then, did he think about what he would call it. So I think with that, let's cue to some music, Ian.
All right. This is Prairie Jewel by
John Reichman, with help from the Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the music this morning. Ask Ian to come up and light the chalice, and I'll read that into the service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, to serve human need, and to help one another. And I would invite anybody to send in joys or concerns, and we can certainly acknowledge those. And Ian, looks like you're going to be first. Is that true?
Oh,
if you're not, I am.
we had a lovely hike up the Tongue River Canyon, and that was just a joy. And I got to see my parents and some of their old friends. Yeah, maybe everyone's tired of sheltering in place, but hopefully we're all still safe.
I've got one. It's a candle for my wife, Michelle, who's been and is an absolutely wonderful mother to our children. And I know if Michelle was here, she would be acknowledging her own mother, who was in turn a wonderful mother to all of her children.
From Chris Corfanta for candle lighting. Let's also recognize the origins of Mother's Day, a proclamation by Julia Ward Howe promoting peace and eradicating war. A Mother's Peace Day.
Do you know what year was that?
I do not, but perhaps someone will chat it in if they do.
You could Google that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, well, you light a candle. Just a concern for those for whom Mother's Day is a challenge. For whatever reason, it can be a challenging day as well.
Yep.
Ramona says, light a candle for my husband. He just graduated again.
Congratulations! The more degrees, the better. I have a concern for my grandma on Mother's Day. She has been facing a lot of challenges these last few months. She's 99 3/4, and yeah, she's not sure exactly where she is or what's going on most of the time, and that's really recent. So she's been really with it up until the last little bit. So she's here, and I'm gonna go peer in through her window today, I think. So wish me luck with that.
Get arrested.
Yeah, that's a Mother's
I'll
Day
let them
treat.
know I'm coming. Yeah.
We have an update from Chris. Julia Ward Howe made this proclamation in 1870
Nice.
for peace and eradicating war. From David Carlson, for my brother who has Parkinson's and is back in the hospital in California. Light a candle for him.
More? Do you have one, Grace?
No. Just the one I already said, that's it. Yeah.
One last candle. One last candle for joys and concerns felt but not expressed this morning. Thank you all. We've got a few words here that I hope will be useful to lead us into a short meditation period. And after that, it'll be followed with Spirit of Life, which is pretty traditional for us to sing. So I think that's probably all queued up, right, Ian? Okay. Excuse me. So these words come from T.S. Eliot. I said to my soul, be still and wait without hope. For hope would be hope for the wrong thing. Wait without love, for love would be the love of the wrong thing. There's yet faith, but the faith and the love are all in the waiting. Wait without thought, for you are not ready for thought. So the darkness shall be the light, and the stillness the dancing. You should be a band. That's very nice. Reverend Mark Worth is a Unitarian Universalist interim minister. He has some 22 years of experience as a settled minister and 2 years of experience in interim ministry. He was born in Detroit. His father became a Methodist minister when Mark was 13. I was inspired to enter the ministry by two people, he says. From my father, I learned something of the pastoral side of ministry, and from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., how ministry could be a vehicle for building a better world. But before high school graduation, he realized he was no longer a Methodist, thus closing the door to the Methodist ministry. As an undergraduate in the 1960s, Mark helped lead campus groups that supported civil rights and opposed the Vietnam War. After graduation, he received conscientious objector status on religious grounds. He did 2 years alternate service at Berkshire Medical Center in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. The Unitarian Universalist Church in Pittsfield was operating a draft counseling center, and Mark went there to learn about a church that cared about peace. He says, I immediately felt at home as a Unitarian Universalist, and he joined in 1970. He attended Meadville Lombard Theological School in Chicago and served as a student minister in Houghton and St. Joseph, Michigan, and Rockford, Illinois. He completed his internship at the Unitarian Church of Hinesdale, Illinois, and earned a Master of Divinity degree, and was ordained in 1991. He served various congregations from 1991 through 2013 and taught Unitarian Universalist history at Bangor Theological Seminary from 1995 to 2012. He delivered this sermon at the Harvard Unitarian Universalist Church on February 26, 2017. Einstein's Candle, Awe, Wonder, and Faith by Reverend J. Mark Worth. Albert Einstein once said, the most beautiful emotion we can experience is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of all true art and science. Those for whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, are as good as dead, a snuffed out candle. To sense that behind anything that can be experienced, there is something that our minds cannot grasp, whose beauty and sublimity reaches us only indirectly. This is religiousness. In this sense, and in this sense only, a devoutly religious man. In 1930, Rabbi Herbert S. Goldstein of New York City sent a telegram to Albert Einstein. Do you believe in God? The answer was paid with a 50-word limit. Einstein managed it in about 30 words. He said, I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of all that exists, not in a God who concerns himself with the fates and actions of human beings. Einstein was expressing his respect for the work of Baruch Spinoza, the 17th century Jewish philosopher. Spinoza, who was excommunicated by the rabbis of his time and place, was not famous in his own lifetime, but he is well regarded today for his courage, convictions, and ideas. Although I am oversimplifying, Spinoza essentially identified God with nature, and everything that exists is God, and God is revealed in the infinite natural universe. Today we call his theology or outlook pantheism. Einstein, like Spinoza, recognizes the place of mystery in human life. Before the telegram from Rabbi Goldstein, Einstein, as mentioned above, had already said that the person who had lost a sense of awe and mystery is as good as dead, a snuffed-out candle. Spinoza and Einstein considered themselves to be religious men, although not traditionally religious. Einstein could recognize both the strengths and limitations of science. As I mentioned last week, science and religion ask different kinds of questions. When speaking of origins, for instance, the scientists ask questions of approximate origins, the origins of this or that entity or form of life within the system of nature, The planets, the earth, rocks, living things. How did each arise out of something that came before? These are scientific questions, and rightly so. Religion asks questions about ultimate origins. What is the source and grounding of the entire universe? Should we regard this whole system as somehow sacred or holy? And if so, what is our relationship to that sacredness? Who are we and where are we going? In other words, what does it all mean? Science doesn't ask what it means, only how it works. Ask a different kind of question and you get a different kind of answer. So the supposed disagreement between religion and science is, I believe, a false issue. Myths of the origins of things, the Epic of Gilgamesh, Pandora's Box, the Garden of Eden, these stories were never intended to answer modern scientific questions. They were not written to answer the questions of how or when. They were written to answer the questions of why. What does it all mean? Many people today misunderstand the nature of biblical myths and parables, and so they look for scientific answers in a place where scientific questions were never asked. Even within the same discipline, religion, our questions have a cultural context. The Egyptians 4,000 years ago lived in one context and asked one set of religious questions. The Egyptians of today live in a different context and ask different religious questions than did the ancient Egyptians. The answers are different because the religious questions that were asked in other ages and cultures were different than our religious questions today. Some questions and some answers survive the test of time better than others. But we are always asking our questions in a particular time and place and situation. Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam are all products of their time and place and cultural experiences. On the Scottish Isle of Mull in the Inner Hebrides, on an isolated corner of the island, there's an ancient stone circle at Loch Bew. Visitors to Mull will find it in a farmer's field, far off the beaten path. Unlike the larger and more famous stone circles at Stonehenge and Avebury, Loch Bew doesn't attract many visitors. On a cool, damp day in July of 2004, Mickey, that's his wife, and I had the field, the ancient stone circle, the mist, and the surrounding hills all to ourselves. Who erected the standing stones and other megaliths of northern Europe? It was so long ago, the circle at Loch Bew is about 4,500 years old, that we do not know. The Druids did not erect the stone circles. The standing stones were already ancient long before the Druids arrived. What was the purpose of the circles? An outlier at Loch Bew points to the sunset on the winter solstice. An outlier at Stonehenge points to the sunrise at the summer solstice. This suggests the mixture of wonder and fear that humans feel in all cultures toward the mystery of the natural world and the understanding we have of our mortality within our world. We imagine that the religion of the builders of those stone circles must have been rooted in nature, and their rituals may have been based on the changing seasons, the movement of the sun, and the phases of the moon. The great mystery of the natural world. Has that sense of mystery disappeared, or is it still the basis for religious yearning? In 1705, John Toland, an Irish freethinker, coined the term pantheist to describe Spinoza's religious beliefs. A pantheist believes that God and nature are essentially one and the same. Pantheism sees the cosmos as an all-encompassing unity, understands nature to be sacred, and rejects the idea of a God that is a superperson sitting on a throne in the clouds, a great Santa Claus in the sky. To the pantheist, God is not literally a personal being. Ralph Waldo Emerson and his transcendentalist disciples were essentially pantheists. The transcendentalists were all either Unitarians or they hung out with Unitarians, and they had a strong influence on Unitarian Universalists today. When I first joined a UU church 47 years ago, I was told, scratch a Unitarian and you'll probably find a pantheist. The Chinese philosophy of Taoism is often understood to be a type of pantheism. Laozi Dao De Jing never speaks of a personal creator God, but sees the Tao as the way of the universe. In Stephen Mitchell's translation, verse 34 says, "The great Tao flows everywhere. All things are born from it, yet it doesn't create them. It pours itself into its work, yet it makes no claim. It nourishes infinite worlds, yet it doesn't hold on to them. Since it is merged with all things and hidden in their hearts, it can be called humble. Since all things vanish into it, and it alone endures, it can be called great. It isn't aware of its greatness, thus it is truly great." In other words, Tao is so all-encompassing that every plant, creature, and human originates and lives because of it, and yet the Tao doesn't seek to dominate anyone or anything. The Tao does not require or even desire praise. I was always turned off by Christian assertions that God wants our praise. That always made God seem small and petty. In contrast, the Tao's indifference toward praise makes the Tao truly great. We should be like the Tao. By not claiming greatness, the wise person achieves greatness. Without worrying about divine beings who must be prayed to and sacrificed to so that they won't send floods or hurricanes, the Taoist reveres the way of the universe, the Tao, and learns from it. Being one with nature, the wise person lives in accord with the Tao, the mystery of the universe, the self and the other. Religion is often spoken of mystery, but the deists of the Enlightenment saw the word mystery as an embarrassment. Mystery had been misused by the Catholic and Protestant churches. Any doctrine that was hard to make sense of, such as the doctrine of the Trinity, which says God is three persons who are one person, and Jesus one person who is two persons, one entirely human and the other entirely divine, was declared to be a mystery. The church has taught that it must be true because it's absolutely incomprehensible. Mystery had become cheapened into doctrines, things people were expected to believe. Church members were expected to take the symbols of religion literally. The communion bread and wine stopped being symbolic. Catholic doctrine declared that they literally became the body and blood of Christ, even though chemistry and common sense say they are not. The Bible was no longer just inspired, but became, for many Protestants, the literal Word of God, perfect in every way, even when it is clearly wrong or self-contradicting. It's a mystery. Don't think for yourself, just accept the doctrine, they said. But that's not the way Albert Einstein used the word mystery. Einstein was an eminently modern person, a scientist, and for me, he helped us reclaim the word mystery. I agree with Einstein that mystery begins with a sense of awe. When I stand in awe of the vast array of stars at night, or the seal poking her head out of the water near my kayak, or the Japanese beetles making dinner out of my rose bush, I ask what, if anything, it all means. We probably started asking these questions when we were children. Many who struggled with these questions eventually produced great art, architecture, poetry, and music, such as the Paleolithic cave paintings, the Parthenon, Bach's St. Matthew Passion, Michelangelo's Pieta, statues of the Buddha, Tibetan mandalas, and Islamic calligraphy. To repress the spirit of creativity that is inspired by such awe and wonder would, as Einstein said, be nothing but a snuffed out candle. So where does that leave us? As a 21st century American, I stand in awe and wonder when I look at the night sky, especially when I am home in Maine away from light pollution. And maybe, looking out at the vastness of the universe, I experienced something similar to what was experienced by the ancient people who erected the stone circles. I share their wonder and awe and sense of mystery. And yet I'm a modern person living in a scientific age. I assemble my religious faith and practice from various sources. My Midwestern Methodist childhood, my long-standing skepticism, almost 5 decades experiencing Unitarian Universalism, in its rich variety, and a dozen or more years as a student of Buddhist thought and practice. This mixture is my own because my experience is unique to me, just as yours will be somewhat different because your experience is unique to you. And we hope to keep learning and growing all our lives. Even though there may be no ultimate answers that apply to all times and places and cultures, we go on wondering and asking the questions. What does it all mean? Our answers are always provisional, never perfect or complete. That is why it is a mystery. Mature faith and religious practice never give final answers, but they lean toward the mystery. And we begin with awe and wonder and move forward with faith and practice. Amen. Are we going to try Blue Boat Home, Ian?
Sure.
Okay. We'll sing along at home. I don't know if the words will show up.
They should.
Okay. If you happen to have the blue hymnal, it's number 1064.
Oops. Hold on. What's happening? Give me a second.
Low below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean. Still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
So raise your hand if you're actually singing along at home, okay? I hope so. It's a cool song. We'll do the virtual basket passing right now. And just a reminder that if you would like to make a contribution to the fellowship, you can do so by sending a check to Ramona Stein, UUFS Treasurer, at 1590 Sugarland Drive, number B-206 here in Sheridan. Or visit our website and you can see a little link to Tithely, which is the group that we partnered with to accept online contributions for the fellowship as well. So please join me in blessing the offering. Let this be an offering to sustain and strengthen this place, which is so sacred to many of us, a community of memory and hope, for we are the keepers of the dream. And thank you very much. Well, I seem to have developed an affinity for Reverend Mark Ward. I also chose something that he said as the closing words for this morning. Mystery can simply mean letting go of the need to seek out an ultimate reason behind all things. Instead of limiting our imagination or understanding, mystery invites us into more expansive awareness. It's an awareness that leads us not away from religion, but into it. Religion that accepts the givenness of the world. Religion that calls us to celebrate and to live attuned to the world's rhythms, that invites us to appreciate all life as an interdependent whole. It's a perspective that we see in Walt Whitman, quoting Walt Whitman here. I believe a leaf of grass is no less than the journey work of the stars, a grain of sand, and the running blackberry would adorn the parlors of heaven, and the narrowest hinge in my hand puts to scorn all machinery, and the cow surpasses any statue, and a mouse is a miracle to stagger sextillions of infidels. Each of us sorts out how to make our way in the world of our experience and the circumstances of our upbringing. The result is a faith that orients us in our lives. Each of us comes to frame our own sense of where our heart rests in our astonishing encounters with the world around us. There's something to be said for ceasing to worry about the firmness of our footing and turning our gaze to the weird and wonderful world around us as we wade with uncertain steps into the mystery that is riffling around us and tugging at our knees. And with that, if there are any comments or questions, bearing in mind I am certainly not an expert on pantheism or the thoughts of Albert Einstein, but let's see where this goes, if it goes anywhere.
I do have one from Chris Carpanta right now. She says, thank you. This was lovely. I think I am an Einsteinian pantheist. So
I know. As I was reading the sermon, I didn't get very far into it, and it's like, oh, I guess that's what I am. And I've tried to articulate some of those ideas. I've talked to Victor about it, I don't know how many times, quite a few times in the past, and just trying to articulate this idea that I'm part of something that it's the same as, I always use elk as my thing that I'm part of. I just want to be like the elk. They don't care. They don't care that there are predators after them. I don't think they think like that. I think it's just, they are. They're just what they are. And I want to be that same thing. And I have a really nice little quote that I thought sort of got at that. It is from, oh dear. Oh, I guess I didn't. Oh wait, yeah, here it is. It's by Sharon Dobrovich. Pantheism means living my life authentically and not letting other people determine how I think or feel or act. Pantheism means truly living each day one at a time, because now is all there is. This is the part I like. I realize how right it all is and how I'm part of it, as is every part of nature, my friends the elk included. It means knowing that when I die, I'm still part of it, just in a different way. So anyway, struggled with this idea of what I really believe, but a lot of what I read this morning seemed to kind of get at it for me.
Well, I love that connection to the 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 strength that comes from believing, but we can't know what's really going on. And so grounding our belief in believing that we don't know what's going on, but being in awe of it, that just tickles me too. So thank you, Bill. That was a great talk. And I have kept a bookmark in my little copy of the Tao Te Ching on number 34 for quite some time. So I was just tickled when you had that as like kind of a center point in your talk. I was like, oh yeah, chapter 20, chapter 34. I know that one.
Excellent.
It is excellent.
Yeah, you know, and this was mostly new to me. I mean, familiar with that quote from Albert Einstein, but I don't know, just the idea of pantheism is really new to me. I mean, and for me to be able to sort of label myself, you know, and other people probably could have done that long ago, including Victor. He probably pegged me as a pantheist a long time ago, but I don't know, it was just kind of interesting to me and sort of refreshing. So.
You've got a few other comments. Don White says, thanks, Bill. I enjoyed your presentation. Nancy Cranford says, I really enjoyed your presentation, Bill. I hope you have a copy of it. And then Robert Tilden, there it is. Robert Tilden says, in the beginning of the talk, I felt an assumption was made that religions are set in time. In truth, religions develop just like everything else, and only religions that are no longer practiced are frozen in time. So, for example, while Latin was the language of the Catholic Church, now Mass is held in the local languages. Jewish sages of the Middle Ages debated whether a future third temple would or would not include sacrifices. The idea that the close-to-nature Druids were closer to nature than we are, well, we have apps that are just as accurate. And just because we connect to Druids at the point of awe of nature doesn't mean that they were any more centered on nature than we are. And then he says, that concludes my contribution.
Well, thank you very much for that, Robert. It's always heartening for me to know that you're out there in electron land, and it's always good to hear from you. I think that's what Reverend Ward was getting at, though, when he just talked about the religions, major religions, over time and asking different questions and within the contextual milieu of their time and place.
I feel like he'd agree that the Muslims of Cairo 500 years ago would not be asking the exact same religious questions that the Muslims in Cairo are today, even if there's a great continuity within that cultural framework.
Right.
That's the context is still different, and the religion is still going to be dealing with people's lives now.
Yeah. And I think Robert's comment was to that point.
I would kind of question that, though, that maybe something that's getting built into certain religions is a longing to answer the question. And even if there are mystical traditions within every religious framework that say, no, we shouldn't try to do that, maybe that's something that people would like to have it cut and dried and say, this is our belief, it's always been our belief, even if that's not really true, they'd like to think it were.
I don't know, is that like just a binky blanket? It just feels good to think you know something or you want to believe this, but could be totally wrong. And there was part of the sermon talked about I made that Dylan Rumsfeld comment, right? The things we know, the things we think we know, the things we don't think we should know, or whatever, right? There's that.
And Marie Lowe says, I couldn't help but think of the medicine wheel as he was sharing the stories of European mystical places. I have stood at the wheel on a misty day with similar thoughts. We are a small world.
I was disappointed to read that the Druids weren't around when Stonehenge was built.
Much older.
Yeah, and I guess I didn't pick up on that when we were there. And I kept looking for Drew as I just wanted to get a picture of one and see if I could, catch one. No wonder they weren't around.
They're almost contemporary in age with the pyramids.
Yeah,
So they're really old.
Druids, yeah.
Pretty good.
I think so.
No more
Okay.
comments?
I think that's it.
Well, thank you everybody for submitting comments and participating. I suppose we could wrap it up then and extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you everybody and have a wonderful Mother's Day.
How have the Zoom chats been going? I'm out of the loop on that.
I have not participated, but that's coming up at 11, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that's coming.
That's coming up like in 5 minutes.
It's so soon. That's why I haven't been to it.
Yeah, no, I understand, yeah.
Great.